The stagecoach wheels kicked up clouds of red dust as it rolled into Muskogee, Oklahoma territory, on a sweltering July afternoon in 1891. And inside sat a woman who had traveled halfway across the country to marry a stranger, bringing along the one person she refused to leave behind. Felicity Jameson clutched her brother's hand as the coach lurched to a stop outside the general store, her heart hammering so hard she could barely breathe. 4 months ago, she had been sorting through her late father's debts in their cramped Boston tenement, watching creditors circle like vultures, when she had made the desperate decision to answer an advertisement seeking a mail-order bride for an Oklahoma rancher. Her brother Thomas sat beside her, his thin body listing slightly to the left, his legs useless from the fever that had struck him down when he was 7 years old. Now 19, the same age as Felicity's 21 years, Thomas had learned to navigate the world from a wooden wheelchair their father had built before the drink had taken him. Felicity had written 3 letters to the rancher, Isaiah Olsen, explaining her situation, making it abundantly clear that she and Thomas were a matched set, that she would not and could not abandon her brother to the mercy of distant relatives who had already made their disdain known. She had expected no reply. Instead, Isaiah had written back within 2 weeks with words that had made her weep into her threadbare pillow. "If you are willing to be my wife and help me build a life here, then your brother is welcome in my home. I have plenty of land and plenty of work for a man with good hands and a sharp mind. We all have our struggles, Miss Jameson. A man is not measured by his legs but by his character." The stagecoach driver opened the door, and Felicity stepped down into the blazing Oklahoma sun, immediately feeling sweat begin to bead on her forehead beneath her bonnet. She turned to help Thomas, but a tall figure was already striding toward them from across the dusty street, and her breath caught in her throat. Isaiah Olsen was not what she had expected. The photograph he had sent showed a stern man with dark hair and serious eyes, but it had not captured the way he moved with purpose and grace, or how his sun-weathered face transformed when he smiled. He was perhaps 27 or 28, with broad shoulders and calloused hands, wearing clean denim trousers and a cotton shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. But it was his eyes that struck her most, warm brown eyes that crinkled at the corners as he looked at her and then at Thomas with equal welcome. "Miss Jameson," he said, his voice a deep rumble that somehow put her instantly at ease. "I am Isaiah Olsen. Welcome to Muskogee." "Mr. Olsen," Felicity managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is my brother Thomas." Isaiah moved past her without hesitation and extended his hand to Thomas, who sat in the wheelchair the driver had just unloaded, his eyes wary but hopeful. "Thomas Jameson, it is an honor to meet you. Your sister tells me you have a good head for figures and have read more books than most men twice your age." Thomas shook his hand, surprise and relief flooding his thin face. "She exaggerates, sir, but I do my best." "No, sir, needed. We will be family soon enough." Isaiah turned back to Felicity, and his smile softened. "I meant what I wrote in my letters, Miss Jameson. I am getting 2 blessings today, not 1. A man who turns away someone in need is not worth the dirt on his boots." Felicity felt tears sting her eyes, and she blinked them back furiously, not wanting to cry in the middle of the street like some weak-minded fool. But the relief was so overwhelming that her knees felt weak. She had been so afraid, so terribly afraid, that despite his letters, Isaiah would take one look at Thomas and realize what a burden he was taking on, that he would send them back east on the next stage. Isaiah seemed to understand. He touched her elbow gently, respectfully. "Come. My wagon is just there. I have a ranch about 6 miles outside of town. It is not fancy, but it is solid, and there is room enough for all of us. The Reverend is expecting us tomorrow morning if that suits you, Miss Jameson. I thought you might want a night to rest and to be sure of your decision before we speak our vows. That is very considerate, Felicity said, finding her voice. Thank you. Isaiah loaded their few belongings into the back of a sturdy wagon with practiced efficiency, then lifted Thomas, wheelchair and all, with surprising ease, settling him carefully in the wagon bed on a nest of blankets. Thomas looked startled by the casual strength, but Isaiah just grinned at him. I have been hauling hay bales and wrestling cattle since I was 12. You weigh less than a newborn calf, no offense intended. None taken, Thomas said, and Felicity heard a note of humor in his voice that had been absent for months. The ride to the ranch took them through rolling prairie land dotted with wildflowers and stands of blackjack oak. Isaiah kept up a steady stream of conversation, pointing out landmarks and telling them about the area. He had come to Oklahoma Territory 5 years ago with his parents and younger sister. He explained, staking a claim and building a ranch from nothing. His parents had died 2 years past in an influenza outbreak that had swept through the territory, and his sister had married a banker in Tulsa the previous spring. I have been managing alone since then, Isaiah said, guiding the horses with easy competence. I have 15 head of cattle, some chickens, a good milk cow, and 2 horses besides these draft animals. The house is small but sturdy. I built most of it myself with my father. There is a well with clean water and good grazing land. I am not a rich man, Miss Jameson, but I am not poor either. We will have enough. Felicity, she said quietly, if we are to be married, you should call me Felicity. He glanced at her, and the warmth in his eyes made her stomach flutter. Felicity, that is a beautiful name, it suits you. The ranch house came into view as they crested a small rise, and Felicity felt her spirits lift despite her exhaustion. It was a simple structure, wood frame with a covered porch, but it looked well maintained and welcoming. There was a barn nearby, a chicken coop, and a fenced pasture where cattle grazed in the late afternoon sun. Isaiah helped her down from the wagon, his hands careful on her waist, and she felt the solid strength of him, the steadiness. Then he lifted Thomas again, carrying him up the porch steps while Felicity followed with the wheelchair. Inside, the house was neat and clean if sparsely furnished. There was a main room with a stone fireplace, a table and chairs, and a kitchen area with a cast iron stove. 2 doorways led to what Felicity assumed were bedrooms. I thought Thomas could take my room, Isaiah said, setting Thomas down in a sturdy chair. It is on the ground floor and larger. I cleaned it out and put in a new bed frame. Miss Jameson, you can have my sister's old room. It still has her bed and dresser. I have been sleeping in the loft above, and I will continue to do so until after the wedding, and then, well, we will figure things out as we go. Felicity felt heat rise to her cheeks at the implication, but she appreciated his thoughtfulness in not assuming anything. That sounds perfect. Thank you, Isaiah. Over the next few hours, Isaiah showed them around the property. He had installed a ramp leading up to the porch, newly built from the look of the lumber, and inside Thomas's new room, there were low shelves within easy reach and a wide doorway. It was clear Isaiah had been preparing for their arrival, thinking about what Thomas would need. At supper, which Isaiah prepared with surprising skill, they sat around the table and talked. Isaiah asked Thomas about his reading, and Thomas, slowly warming up, began to discuss the books he loved, especially histories and accounts of natural science. Isaiah listened with genuine interest, asking questions and sharing his own observations about the land and animals. I never had much schooling, Isaiah admitted, but I would like to learn more, Maybe you could teach me some things, Thomas. In return, I could teach you about ranching. There is plenty a man can do from a wheelchair if we set things up right. I need help with the account books, planning the planting, even mending tack. My stitching is terrible." Thomas looked at him with something like wonder. "You mean that? You really want my help?" "I do not say things I do not mean," Isaiah said firmly. "You are part of this family now. Everyone contributes what they can." After supper, Felicity helped clean up while Isaiah took Thomas outside to watch the sunset. Through the window, she could see them talking, Thomas animated in a way she had not seen in years, and Isaiah listening intently. Her heart squeezed with an emotion she could not quite name. That night, lying in the small bedroom that smelled faintly of lavender, Felicity stared at the ceiling and tried to calm her racing thoughts. Tomorrow she would marry this man, this stranger who had shown them more kindness in one afternoon than most people had shown them in years. She was terrified and hopeful in equal measure. There was a soft knock at her door. "Felicity, are you still awake?" She rose and opened the door to find Isaiah standing there, lit by lamplight, his expression uncertain. "I am sorry to disturb you. I just wanted to make sure you were all right." "This has been a big day." "I am well," she said softly. "Isaiah, I cannot thank you enough for your kindness to Thomas. You do not know what it means." "I think I do," he said quietly. "My mother had a brother who lost his arm in the war. People treated him like he was useless, like he was less than human. It broke something in him. I swore I would never be that kind of man." He paused, then met her eyes directly. "Felicity, I want you to know that I will do everything in my power to be a good husband to you. I know this is not a conventional marriage, that you are here out of necessity more than affection, but I hope that in time we can build something real, something good." "I hope so too," she whispered, and she realized she meant it. The next morning dawned clear and bright. Felicity dressed in her best gown, a simple blue cotton dress that had been her mother's, and pinned up her auburn hair with hands that trembled only slightly. When she emerged from her room, she found Isaiah waiting in a clean white shirt and dark trousers, his hair neatly combed, looking nervous and handsome. Thomas was already in the wagon, grinning. "You look beautiful, Lissy." The nickname made her smile. He had not called her that since they were children. The church in Muskogee was small and wooden, and the reverend was a kind-faced man with silver hair who did not bat an eye at Thomas's wheelchair or their unusual circumstances. He spoke the words of the marriage ceremony with gentle authority, and when Isaiah took Felicity's hands in his own, she felt the calluses on his palms and the warmth of his skin. "I, Isaiah Olsen, take you, Felicity Jameson, to be my lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do us part." His voice was steady and sure, and his eyes never left hers. When it was her turn, Felicity's voice wavered only slightly. "I, Felicity Jameson, take you, Isaiah Olsen, to be my lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do us part." The reverend pronounced them husband and wife, and Isaiah leaned down to kiss her. It was soft and brief, respectful but warm, and Felicity felt something flutter in her chest that might have been the beginning of hope. They signed the marriage certificate, Thomas serving as a witness along with the reverend's wife, and then they were back in the wagon, heading home. Home. The word felt strange and wonderful on her tongue. The next week settled into a rhythm that surprised Felicity with its ease. Isaiah rose before dawn to tend the animals, and Felicity learned the routines of the ranch. She gathered eggs, milked the cow, tended the vegetable garden that was struggling in the summer heat. Isaiah was patient with her inexperience, showing her how to do things without making her feel foolish. Thomas thrived in ways that astonished her. Isaiah set him up with the ranch accounts, and Thomas dove into the work with enthusiasm, creating organized ledgers and finding ways to save money on supplies. Isaiah built a work table at the right height for Thomas to mend tack and harness, and soon Thomas was producing neat, strong stitching that held better than Isaiah's rough attempts. More than that, Isaiah included Thomas in everything. He would lift Thomas onto one of the horses, a gentle mare named Daisy, and lead them around the pasture so Thomas could check the fences and the cattle. He asked Thomas's opinion on everything from when to plant winter wheat to how to organize the barn. "You have a good eye for planning," Isaiah told Thomas one evening. "Better than mine. I just do things the way my father did, but you think about why things work." Thomas glowed under the praise, and Felicity felt her heart expand watching them together. But at night, there was an awkwardness between Felicity and Isaiah that neither knew quite how to bridge. They shared the larger bedroom now, a necessity given the size of the house, but Isaiah was scrupulously proper. He changed in the barn and came to bed only after Felicity was already under the covers, staying carefully to his side of the mattress. A month after the wedding, on a hot August night when the air was thick and still, Felicity lay awake listening to Isaiah's breathing. She knew he was not asleep either. Finally, she gathered her courage. "Isaiah?" "Yes." His voice was quiet in the darkness. "Are you unhappy? With me, I mean, with our marriage." She heard him shift, turning toward her though they could barely see each other in the dark. "No. God, no, Felicity." "Why would you think that? You seem so distant sometimes, so careful with me." There was a long pause. Then Isaiah said, his voice rough, "I am trying to be respectful. You married me out of necessity, and I do not want to force anything on you that you do not want. I told you I hoped we could build something real, but I know these things take time." Felicity's throat tightened. She reached out in the darkness and found his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "Isaiah, you have been nothing but kind to me and to Thomas. You have given us a home and a future. I came here expecting duty and obligation, but what I have found is so much more. I am not unhappy, I am just not sure what you want from me." His hand tightened on hers. "I want you to be happy. I want you to feel safe. And I want, God help me, I want to be a real husband to you, Felicity. Not just in name, but only if that is what you want too." Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. In the past month, she had found herself watching Isaiah as he worked, admiring the strength of his arms, the kindness in his eyes, the gentle way he spoke to the animals and to Thomas. She had found herself wanting his good opinion, wanting to make him smile, wanting to know everything about him. "I want that too," she whispered. She heard his sharp intake of breath, and then he was moving closer, his hand coming up to cup her face in the darkness. "Are you sure, Felicity? I do not want you to feel obligated." "I am sure," she said, and she was. "Isaiah, somewhere in the past month, I stopped thinking of you as a stranger. I do not know exactly when it happened, but it did. I want to be your wife in every way." He kissed her then, not the brief, respectful kiss of their wedding, but something deeper, something that spoke of longing and tenderness and barely restrained desire. Felicity kissed him back, her hands coming up to tangle in his hair, and when they finally drew apart, they were both breathing hard. What followed was tender and sweet and a little awkward, as first times often are, but Isaiah was patient and gentle, and Felicity felt something shift inside her, a wall crumbling that she had not even known was there. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Isaiah's arm around her, her head on his chest, and for the first time since leaving Boston, Felicity felt truly safe. "I am falling in love with you," Isaiah murmured into her hair. "I think I have been since the moment you stepped off that stagecoach with your chin up and your eyes scared but determined. You are the bravest woman I have ever met, Felicity Olsen. Felicity Olsen." Her new name. "I am falling in love with you too," she admitted. "You are a good man, Isaiah. The best man I have ever known." The rest of the summer and into fall, their life together deepened and strengthened. Felicity learned to love the work of the ranch, the rhythm of the seasons, the satisfaction of gathering eggs still warm from the nest and pulling carrots from the earth. Isaiah taught her to ride, his hands steadying her as she learned to guide the horse, and she taught him to read better, working through the books Thomas loved in the evenings by lamplight. Thomas continued to blossom. He took over all the record-keeping for the ranch and began corresponding with a seed company in Kansas City about drought-resistant crops, his letters precise and persuasive. Isaiah built him a larger workspace in the barn with good light and easy access, and Thomas began to experiment with leatherwork, creating beautiful detailed pieces that Isaiah praised lavishly. In October, a neighbor, Jacob Morrison, stopped by to discuss buying one of Isaiah's calves. He was a gruff older man with a weathered face, and he looked at Thomas with barely concealed disdain. "That is a lot of extra mouths to feed," he said to Isaiah in what he probably thought was a low voice. "Man like that cannot pull his own weight." Isaiah's face went hard and he stood up straighter, his voice cold. "Mr. Morrison, that man is my brother-in-law and a valued member of this family. He handles all my accounts, does better leatherwork than anyone in 3 counties, and has a mind sharp enough to cut glass. If you cannot treat him with respect, you can take your business elsewhere." Morrison blustered and made excuses, but Isaiah was unmoved. The man left without buying the calf, and Isaiah came back into the house still simmering with anger. Thomas, who had heard everything from his workspace, looked up with shining eyes. "You did not have to do that. You could have made that sale." "There will be other sales," Isaiah said firmly. "But there is only one you, Thomas, and I will not have anyone speak about my family that way." Felicity, watching them, felt her love for her husband deepen even further. This man, who had started as a stranger, had become the center of her world. That winter was mild by Oklahoma standards, though there were a few weeks of bitter cold and a snowstorm that left them snowed in for 3 days. Felicity discovered she was pregnant in January, and when she told Isaiah, he swept her up in his arms and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. "A baby," he kept saying. "We are going to have a baby." Thomas was equally delighted, immediately beginning to plan modifications to make the house safer for a small child. He sketched out designs for gates and padded corners, his enthusiasm infectious. The pregnancy was not easy. Felicity suffered from terrible morning sickness that lasted well into the afternoon, and there were days when she could barely keep anything down. Isaiah was endlessly patient, holding her hair back when she was sick, bringing her weak tea and dry toast, rubbing her back when she ached. "I am sorry," she said one particularly bad day in February. "I am useless like this." "You are growing our child," Isaiah said firmly. "That is the most important work there is. Everything else can wait." In April, with the prairie coming alive in wildflowers and new grass, Felicity went into labor. Isaiah rode into town to fetch the midwife, a capable woman named Martha Green, while Thomas stayed with Felicity, holding her hand and talking to her in a calm, steady voice that helped her through the contractions. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next morning. Isaiah paced the main room, nearly wearing a hole in the floor while Martha worked with Felicity. Finally, just as the sun was fully up, a baby's cry split the air. "It is a boy," Martha called. "A fine, healthy boy." Isaiah burst into the bedroom to find Felicity exhausted but radiant, cradling a red-faced, squalling infant against her chest. He fell to his knees beside the bed, tears streaming down his face as he looked at his wife and son. "He is perfect," Isaiah breathed. "You are perfect. God, Felicity, I love you so much." They named him Jonathan Isaac Olsen, and he became the center of their world. Thomas was a devoted uncle, content to hold the baby for hours, singing to him in a soft voice and making silly faces that eventually earned him the baby's first real smile. As Jonathan grew, the ranch continued to prosper. Isaiah expanded the herd, and Thomas's careful management of resources meant they had money to invest in improvements. They built a larger barn and a proper chicken coop, and Isaiah hired a young man from town to help with the heavy work during busy seasons. Felicity had found a home, a real home, not just a place to live, but a place where she was loved and valued. She had found it in the arms of a cowboy who had looked at her and her disabled brother and seen not burdens but blessings, who had opened his heart and his home without reservation. 2 years after Jonathan's birth, Felicity gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah Margaret, and then 2 years after that, another son they called Daniel. The house was full of noise and laughter, children's toys scattered across the floor, and Thomas in the middle of it all, telling stories and helping with homework once the children were old enough. On a warm evening in June 1899, 8 years after Felicity had stepped off that stagecoach, the family gathered on the porch to watch the sunset. Jonathan, now 7, was helping Thomas repair a saddle, his small hands clumsy but eager. Sarah, 5, was on Isaiah's lap, chattering about the chickens, and baby Daniel was nursing contentedly at Felicity's breast. "You remember the day we arrived?" Felicity asked Isaiah quietly, "when you said you were getting 2 blessings?" Isaiah smiled, that warm smile that still made her heart flutter after all these years. "I remember. And I was right, though I did not know the half of it then. I thought I was getting a wife and a brother. I did not know I was getting a whole family, a whole life." "Everything good in my world started the day you came here, Felicity." "For me too," she said softly. "I came here desperate and afraid, and you gave me everything. You gave us everything." Thomas looked up from his work with Jonathan, his face content and peaceful. "I was so scared that day. I thought I would be a burden, that you would regret taking me in. But you never made me feel that way, Isaiah, not once." "Because you never were a burden," Isaiah said firmly. "You were family from the moment I saw you. You still are. You always will be." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun sank lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. The cattle lowed softly in the distance, and somewhere a bird sang its evening song. Felicity looked around at her family, at the home they had built together, and felt a profound sense of gratitude and peace. Life was not always easy. There were hard winters and dry summers, sick cattle and money worries. Sarah came down with scarlet fever the winter she was 6, and they spent 3 terrifying weeks nursing her back to health. Thomas occasionally struggled with pain in his legs and back, legacy of his childhood illness. There were disagreements and hurt feelings, moments of frustration and exhaustion. But through it all, they had each other. Isaiah remained steadfast and loving, his strength a constant that Felicity relied on. Thomas became not just an uncle but a second father to the children, teaching them to read and think and question. And Felicity herself grew from a frightened refugee into a confident woman who knew her own worth and the worth of her family. The children grew up strong and kind, learning from their father's example to value people for who they were, not what they could or could not do. Jonathan developed his uncle's love of learning and became a teacher. Sarah inherited her mother's determination and her father's way with animals, taking over more and more of the ranch work as she grew older. Daniel was the quiet one, thoughtful and artistic, spending hours drawing the prairie landscape and the people he loved. Thomas never married, but he did not seem to mind. He had his books and his leatherwork and his beloved nieces and nephew. He had a brother in Isaiah and a sister in Felicity, and he had a home where he was valued and loved. It was more than enough. In the spring of 1910, with Jonathan away at normal school training to be a teacher, and Sarah and Daniel both teenagers working alongside their parents on the ranch, Isaiah and Felicity took a rare moment alone, riding out to a high point on their land where they could see for miles in every direction. "We have done well," Isaiah said, looking out over the rolling prairie. "Better than I ever dreamed when I first came to this territory." "We have," Felicity agreed. She was 40 now, with threads of silver in her auburn hair and fine lines around her eyes, but Isaiah still looked at her like she was the most beautiful woman in the world. "I got a letter from a man in Texas," Isaiah said slowly. "A widower with a young daughter. He is looking for a mail-order bride, and he wrote asking if I would recommend the practice. Apparently someone told him about us." "What did you tell him?" Felicity asked, curious. "I told him it was the best decision I ever made," Isaiah said simply. "I told him that love can grow in unexpected places, that sometimes the greatest blessings come in unexpected packages. I told him about you arriving with Thomas, so brave and so scared, and how I knew immediately that I wanted to spend my life with you both. I told him that if he opened his heart, he might find more than he ever hoped for." Felicity felt tears sting her eyes, the good kind of tears. "I love you, Isaiah Olsen. I have loved you for so long now I can barely remember what it felt like not to love you. I love you too, Felicity. More than words can say." He reached over and took her hand, and they sat there on their horses, hands clasped, looking out over the land they had built their life on. That evening, gathered around the supper table with Thomas and Sarah and Daniel, with the windows open to the spring breeze and the lamp light warm and golden, Felicity looked around at her family and felt a swell of emotion so strong it nearly took her breath away. This was her life. This wild, beautiful, imperfect, precious life. She had traveled halfway across the country in fear and desperation, bringing her disabled brother because she could not leave him behind, fully expecting hardship and duty and nothing more. Instead, she had found a man who looked at her and Thomas and saw blessings. She had found love, real love, the kind that grew deeper with every passing year. She had found a home. The years continued to roll by, marked by seasons and harvests, by birthdays and holidays and everyday moments of quiet joy. Jonathan brought home a wife, a pretty school teacher named Emma, and they gave Isaiah and Felicity their first grandchild, a boy they named Isaiah after his grandfather. Sarah married a neighboring rancher's son, a good, steady young man who respected her knowledge and treated her as an equal partner. Daniel moved to Tulsa to study art but came home often, his sketchbooks filled with loving portraits of his family. Thomas grew old gracefully, his hair going white but his mind remaining sharp. He was there for the birth of each grandchild, holding them with practiced ease and singing the same songs he had sung to their parents. The children called him Uncle Thomas and loved him dearly, never seeing his wheelchair as anything strange or limiting. In the summer of 1925, on a warm evening much like that one 34 years ago when Felicity had first arrived, the extended family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. It was Isaiah and Felicity's 34th wedding anniversary, and children and grandchildren had come from all over to mark the occasion. Isaiah was 59 now, his dark hair mostly silver, his face deeply lined from years in the sun, but still strong and vital. Felicity was 55, her auburn hair now mostly white, but her eyes still bright and her smile still quick. Thomas, at 53, was frailer than he used to be, but his mind was as sharp as ever, and he delighted in arguing politics and philosophy with his grown nieces and nephews. They gathered on the expanded porch that now wrapped around two sides of the house, eating food that Felicity and her daughters and daughters-in-law had prepared, watching the grandchildren play in the yard. There were 7 grandchildren now, ranging from 14-year-old Isaiah Jonathan down to 2-year-old Rose, Daniel's daughter. "Tell us the story, Grandpa," young Isaiah begged. "Tell us about the day Grandma arrived." Isaiah looked at Felicity, and she smiled, nodding. It was a story the children never tired of hearing. "Well," Isaiah began, settling back in his chair, "it was July of 1891, one of the hottest days I can remember. I was waiting in town, nervous as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs, waiting for the stagecoach. I had sent away for a mail-order bride, you see, and I had no idea what to expect. You knew about Uncle Thomas, though, right?" Sarah's daughter Mary asked. "I did," Isaiah confirmed. "Your grandmother had been very clear in her letters that she would not come without her brother. Some men might have been put off by that, but I admired her loyalty. And when that stagecoach pulled up and your grandmother stepped out, so beautiful and so frightened and so brave, I knew I had made the right decision. And then I met your Uncle Thomas and I said something that I have never regretted." "What did you say?" little Rose asked, though she had heard the story a dozen times. "I said, I am getting 2 blessings today," Isaiah said softly, "and I meant it with my whole heart. Your grandmother and Uncle Thomas came into my life and made it complete. They brought love and laughter and family. Every good thing in my life started that day." "That is not quite true," Felicity interjected, reaching over to take his hand. "The good things started because you were the kind of man who could see blessings when others saw burdens. You were the kind of man who kept his promises and opened his heart. You gave us a home, Isaiah, but you gave us so much more than that. You gave us love and dignity and belonging." Thomas, sitting nearby with a great-grandchild on his lap, added his voice. "I have lived a good life, better than I ever thought possible when I was a young man, and it is because my sister had the courage to take a chance, and because Isaiah had the heart to welcome us both. Family is not just about blood. It is about choosing to love and to keep choosing every day." As the sun set over the Oklahoma prairie, painting the sky in familiar shades of orange and gold, the family sat together, multiple generations bound by love and commitment, and the choice, made 34 years ago, to see blessings instead of burdens. Felicity leaned against Isaiah's shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him, and looked around at the family they had built together. 3 children, all grown and happy, finding their own paths in the world. 7 grandchildren, with more surely to come. Thomas, her beloved brother who had found his place and his purpose, and Isaiah, her husband, her partner, her truest love. "It has been a good life," she said softly. "The best life," Isaiah agreed, kissing her temple, "and I would not change a single moment." Years continued to pass, and the world changed around them. Automobiles became common, and electricity came to Muskogee, and the ranch adapted and evolved with the times. But some things remained constant. The love between Isaiah and Felicity, strengthened and tempered by decades of partnership. The bonds of family, growing ever wider as the children married and had children of their own. The memory of that hot July day in 1891, when a frightened young woman stepped off a stagecoach with her disabled brother and found a home. Thomas passed away in the winter of 1932, peacefully in his sleep at the age of 60. The family mourned him deeply, but they also celebrated the life he had lived, full of love and purpose and contribution. He was laid to rest in the family plot on a hill overlooking the ranch, and every year on his birthday, the children and grandchildren would visit his grave and tell stories about the uncle who had taught them to read and think and see the world with curiosity and kindness. Isaiah and Felicity continued on, growing old together with grace and gratitude. They celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary in 1941, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, a crowd so large they had to hold the party in the barn. Isaiah stood up, leaning on a cane now, and made a toast. 50 years ago, I was a lonely rancher who did something audacious. I sent away for a mail-order bride, and when she arrived bringing her brother with her, I said I was getting 2 blessings. I had no idea how right I was. Felicity, you have been my partner, my love, my best friend. You have given me children and grandchildren and a life richer than I ever imagined. Every day with you has been a gift. I love you more now than I did on our wedding day, and I will love you until my last breath. Felicity, crying openly now, stood and kissed him. And I love you, Isaiah Olsen. You took a chance on a desperate woman and her disabled brother, and you gave us the world. You have been everything I could have hoped for and so much more. Thank you for every moment, for every kindness, for every day of this beautiful life we have built together. The family cheered and applauded, and there was not a dry eye in the barn. Isaiah passed away in the spring of 1946 at the age of 80 after a short illness. He died peacefully, holding Felicity's hand, surrounded by his children and grandchildren. His last words were, "Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for coming to Oklahoma. Thank you for every day." Felicity mourned him deeply, as did everyone who had known him. He was laid to rest next to Thomas, on the hill overlooking the ranch, under a sky as wide and blue as the day Felicity had first arrived. Felicity lived another 12 years, dying peacefully in her sleep in 1958 at the age of 88. In those years, she was surrounded by family, by the legacy she and Isaiah had built together. She told the story of their meeting to anyone who would listen, wanting the world to know about the cowboy who had looked at her and Thomas and seen blessings. When she died, she was laid to rest between Isaiah and Thomas, the 2 men who had defined her life. The headstone was simple but profound. Felicity Jameson Olsen. Beloved wife, mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, she came to Oklahoma seeking safety and found love. She brought her brother and found a family. She took a chance and found a home. 1870 to 1958. The ranch continued through the generations, passed down to Sarah, who had inherited both her father's love of the land and her mother's determination. She and her husband raised their children there, and their children raised children there, and the story of Isaiah and Felicity became part of the family lore, told and retold, a reminder of the power of kindness and the unexpected places love can grow. In the town of Muskogee, there is a small museum now, dedicated to the history of the Oklahoma Territory. In one corner, there is an exhibit about mail-order brides, the women who came west seeking new lives. At the center of that exhibit is a photograph, faded now but still clear. It shows a young couple, Isaiah and Felicity Olsen, on their wedding day in 1891, and standing beside them, a young man in a wheelchair with a smile on his face. The caption reads, Isaiah Olsen and Felicity Jameson Olsen, married July 1891 in Muskogee, Oklahoma Territory. pictured with Felicity's brother, Thomas Jameson. Isaiah famously said upon their arrival, "I am getting two blessings today." The Olsen family went on to become one of the most prominent ranching families in the region, known for their generosity and their commitment to community. Their marriage, which began as a business arrangement, became a legendary love story that lasted 55 years. Visitors to the museum often stop and look at that photograph, at the young couple and the brother, at the hope and uncertainty in their faces, and they read the story of what came after. And sometimes, just sometimes, they are inspired to open their own hearts a little wider, to see blessings where others see burdens, to take a chance on love in unexpected places. Because that is the legacy of Isaiah and Felicity Olsen, of Thomas Jameson, of the mail-order bride who arrived with her disabled brother and the cowboy who welcomed them both. It is a legacy of love and acceptance, and the profound truth that family is not about perfection, but about choosing each other every day, in every circumstance. It is a legacy that continues in the descendants who still ranch the Oklahoma land, in the stories told around dinner tables, in the memory of a hot July day in 1891, when a desperate young woman took a leap of faith and found everything she had ever hoped for and so much more. It is a legacy of two blessings that became a lifetime of joy, proof that the best love stories often begin in the most unexpected ways, and that the greatest gifts often come wrapped in surprising packages. And it is a reminder, passed down through generations, that kindness and courage and an open heart can change not just one life or two, but ripple outward in waves that touch countless lives for generations to come. The story of Isaiah and Felicity, of Thomas and the family they all built together, is not just a story of the past. It is a story of hope for the future, a testament to what is possible when we choose to see blessings instead of burdens, when we choose love over fear, when we choose to open our hearts and our homes to those in need. It is a story that will be told for generations to come, a love story born in the wild Oklahoma territory that grew into something timeless and profound, a legacy of love that will never be forgotten.